Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Melanated Hospice Nurse Podcast. I am Melissa Rowland, your Melanated Hospice Nurse, and I just want to say thank you so much. If this is your first time joining the Melanated Hospice Nurse Podcast community, I have one question for you. Do me a favor. Can you please like and subscribe to this YouTube channel? I would greatly appreciate it. And then once you subscribe, I would love for you to share this channel with others. If you find the information in these podcasts helpful to you, I guarantee you they'll be helpful to others. So like, subscribe, share, all of those beautiful things. If this is not your first time joining the Melanated Hospice Nurse, I just want to say thank you so much for returning, because it is you that's really solidifying this community. You are the grassroots of this community, the ones who believed in this vision from the very beginning. So thank you so much. And if you have yet to subscribe, I need you to do that as well too. So let's get into this topic. Soulful series conversations are what we discuss every month. And then every week we have a soulful conversation where we talk about specifics of the topic. So this month's soulful series topic is redefining strength when it comes to end-of-life care. How do we go from fighting for our lives, fighting for a cure, fighting for eradication of a disease in our bodies, to now accepting end-of-life care because everything that we've tried is no longer working or is not serving the body. It's not reversing what's happening in our body. How do we go from all of that strength that we poured into, that we utilized to try to eradicate the body of the disease, to try to get a cure, to try to get back to a quality of life, there I go again, quality of life that we're familiar with, to now accepting the fact that it appears as if my life is not going to be as long as I had hoped, that the doctors are now talking to me about 6 months to a year or less. Now I have to redefine strength, and now I have to fight for peace, and I have to fight for comfort. I have to fight for additional quality of life. I have to fight for checking off the bucket list now. So how do we go from fighting to now accepting that? So last week's topic, we talked about when a person chooses hospice, does that mean that you're giving up? Or are you choosing differently? So go back and watch that podcast, because that was very informative to really talk about those different layers of what that feels like when we have to choose hospice. Am I giving up? Or am I just choosing a different modality of care that doesn't solely focus on curing, but now focuses on the other aspects of who I am, the spiritual, the mental, the psyche, the conscious, the subconscious, all of those other arenas that I haven't really paid a lot of attention to. And now that it appears as if my life is not going to be as long as I wished, I now want to start focusing on the other parts of who I am. So that's what we talked about last week. This week, we're going to discuss when fighting is not the only way to win. When fighting is not the only way to win. That's the tough one. And understanding that choosing comfort is not defeat. Choosing comfort does not automatically mean defeat. It feels like it, especially if this is a new arena for us, if this is a family member that's going through that and we want them to continue to fight, but now they're saying, I'm exhausted from that. I've tried everything. The body's not responding the way I hoped it would. And now the doctors are talking to me about comfort care. But it doesn't mean that I'm defeated. It means that I understand what's happening. And I no longer want to spend the energy to continue to fight, to try to fight for a cure. When now I want to focus on the quality of my life as opposed to the quantity of it. That's tough, guys. That's really, really tough. That's a tough one. That's a really tough one. So when fighting is not the only way to win, understanding that choosing comfort does not mean that you're choosing defeat. That's not what that means. Because we have to understand that victory comes in many, many forms. Victory comes in creating moments of peace. Victory can come in creating moments of being present. Victory can come in creating lots and lots of love. Things that we've kind of put on the back burner as our lives are just cranking out day after day after day, and we get into the routine of life, and all of a sudden that thing is completely interrupted with the news that it appears as if whatever you're going through, maybe in 6 months to a year, you may not be here. This is hard. I can't imagine that. I've never had that conversation, and I reiterate that all the time. I've never had that conversation. I've been on the other end of the conversation where I was a part of delivering that news as opposed to receiving it. I cannot imagine what that must feel like. But what we're trying to do here in the Melanated Hospice Nurse is make sure that we have a space to have these open, transparent conversations. So people that are experiencing having that conversation or being told that news, they have a place to land where they can express all of what they feel when it comes to this end of life journey. And hopefully not only get guidance, but help to guide others as well too. So what if fighting is not the only way to win? What if fighting is not the only way to win? All of that just sounds so, that's tough. What if fighting for a cure, or fighting, because that's what we think when we think of fighting when it comes to end of life care. What if fighting is not the only way to win? So let's talk about it. Let's talk about that. So when we were younger or just growing up, we were always taught that winning equals fighting. Fighting equals winning, right? In order to win, I don't know where that came from, but in order to win, you have to fight. Winning equals fighting. That's what we believe. That's what we were taught. And not only that, if you didn't win, guess what you had to do? You had to fight harder. You had to fight harder. So we've taken that aspect of winning equals fighting. And if I don't win, I have to fight harder. How does that translate into fighting for a cure for yourself? How does that translate into fighting against a disease that seems like it's taken over your body? How does that translate when it comes to end of life? How does that translate when it comes to your health? How do you translate fighting equals winning? And if I don't win, I fight harder. Because I've always lived with that theory. That's what's gotten me through so many things in my life. So what do I do when I'm fighting? Don't feel like I'm winning, so I fight harder, right? And then we're told never quit, never give up, just keep fighting. And that concept applies to a lot of areas in our life. If it comes to sports, it's the first thing people think about when it comes to sports. If it comes to completing a task, accomplishing a goal, being able to finish school, being able to get through hardships of life, just keep fighting. And if it doesn't work, fight harder, but you can't quit and you can't give up. We run off that fuel. We run off of that. But what do you do when all of a sudden that concept doesn't apply to what's happening right now within your life? If there's an illness or a disease or a sickness that's completely burdening your entire body, and you've been fighting and fighting and not quitting and fighting and fighting and not quitting. Because that's all we've known. Don't give up, keep fighting, fight harder, never quit. But what happens when the illness changes that journey? What do we do? What do we do when an illness changes that journey? That whole concept of understanding fight equals winning. If you don't win, you fight harder, but you never give up and you never quit. And all of a sudden, an illness comes into your life and it completely shifts that journey. And you're fighting and you're fighting and you're fighting and you're fighting and you're not quitting, you're praying, you're fasting, you're doing all of these things that we've been taught. We've been taught those things. We live by those things. So what do we do when that happens? It changes the journey. The illness changes the journey. Now fighting takes on a different meaning. It takes on but how do you shift the mind? If I've been doing this for 57, 58 years, and now here I am, I get diagnosed with an illness, and I've been fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting for 2, 3, 4 years, some people longer than that, much longer than that. And it's like, wait a minute, this concept that has always been effective in other areas of my life, why is it not working now? What do we do when it comes to that? What happens to that? Sorry, just making some adjustments. What do you do? What do you do with that? What do you do when fighting doesn't necessarily mean more treatments? Wow. So here I am, living my life, living by the philosophy of I'm never going to quit. I'm never going to give up. I'm going to keep fighting. I'm going to keep trying. If something defeats me, I'm going to fight harder. Then here comes this illness, and it completely interrupts my journey. And now I have to shift the mindset to think, okay, wait a minute. That philosophy that I live by is not applying to what's happening right now in my life. Now I have to shift the mindset to where fighting doesn't necessarily mean more treatment. That's a tough one. Because somewhere along the line, there comes a point in people's journey when it comes to this end of life journey where they have to make that decision to say, fighting doesn't necessarily mean another treatment. Sometimes the greatest fight equals protecting my peace. Sometimes the greatest fight means protecting my dignity. Sometimes the greatest fight means protecting my comfort. Somewhere along the line, that mindset shifts. So at the Melanated Hospice Nurse, we want to create spaces to where people have the ability to make that shift in that mindset, if that's what they choose to do. They have an open, transparent space where they can say, listen, fighting no longer means more cure or more treatments. That's not what it means anymore in my life. Now I'm fighting to protect my peace. I'm taking that same approach. Never quit, never stop. If it doesn't work, you keep fighting harder. Now I'm taking the approach to where now I'm fighting to protect my peace. I'm fighting to protect my dignity. I'm fighting to protect my comfort. I'm even fighting to protect more precious times with my family. That's a big shift, y'all. And for some people, that shift, sometimes they can actively participate in the shift, but sometimes life happens so fast and these illnesses can advance so quickly that it doesn't give you a chance to really shift at a space and a pace that can help you. It's instantly, you have to make that shift. It's almost like it's forced. You're not really choosing to shift. It's like, okay, well, just last week, I was being told that we can try one more treatment. And now here it is this week. And I'm being told, you know what? We're going to have to call in an end of life care company. We're going to have to call in hospice. And now I'm forced to make the shift. So now I have to literally reshift my whole thought process. All that fighting that I've been doing, all that energy that I've reserved for the fight, for the win, for the victory. Now I have to shift that into another mindset. So where I now have to fight for my peace and my comfort and my dignity and more precious time with my family. Whew. That's what the Melanated Hospice Nurse is here for, is to help provide that space where you can make that shift. Even if it happens suddenly, you have a safe space to land, to have these conversations, to say, what is this that I'm feeling? I'm no longer desiring to fight now for a cure, but I still have that fighting energy inside of me. Use that energy to fight for your peace. Use that energy to fight for your dignity. Use that energy to fight for your comfort. Instead of asking, what else can be done? What else can be done? Now you ask yourself the question, what can I do to make every day count? Instead of asking what else can be done, now a person is asking, What else can I do to make every day count? And you fight for that. That's a shift. Man, that's a shift. That is a shift that a lot of people are not prepared for, but it happens. They're almost forced into shifting into that. But if we can have these open, transparent conversations at the very beginning of an illness or a disease, to say, listen, you fight, and you fight with everything in your being, if that's what you choose to do. You fight. But if you choose that the fighting, you want to shift it from fighting for a cure to now fighting for peace, comfort, dignity, and more quality of life, then let's make sure that we're supporting you in that fight. And I truly believe in having these conversations early on, because remember, y'all already know what I feel. You never take away a person's hope. If somebody is hoping for a cure, you support that. You fight with them to make sure that they're trying to do everything that they can to get their body back into a balance, to get their life back into a balance. But if there comes a point where we see that that's not effective anymore, you make sure that you support them in the fight for peace and comfort and dignity. And having these conversations now can help prepare for that transition not to seem like it's taking the breath out of your body. Not to seem like the transition is a complete end of the world. Going from fighting for a cure to now fighting for comfort and peace. Now fighting to make every day count. I know a lot of the times when you hear the word comfort, and I think what's really challenging for people is when they hear the word comfort, they automatically feel like comfort is not active care. Like it's not active care. Like if I choose comfort, I'm just not going to do anything. I'm just going to let the disease take over my body or whatever it is. I'm not going to do anything. Comfort care. It feels so opposite of curative care. Because in curative care, at least I have things that are tangible. I can go to the doctors. I can have lab work. I can have diagnostic testing done. I have a routine with that. And I know that as long as I'm in that routine, that I know that I'm fighting for a cure, that I'm not giving up, that I feel like if I don't do this, that I am giving up. So as long as I'm able to go to doctor's offices and go to specialists and go to appointments and get lab work done and go to the ER if I need to, and all of these different components of curative care, as long as I'm doing that, I know I'm actively doing something. And then the doctor comes and says, no, well, we tried it all. And now it seems like the approach needs to be more comfort care. And then you just feel like this letdown. Like, so what does that mean, comfort care? Am I not going to do anything? Once again, tricky space, because you never want to take away somebody's hope, right? But one of the biggest myths is that comfort care means that you do nothing. And that is the furthest from the truth. One of the biggest myths is that comfort care means do nothing. That's why it feels so incredibly heavy when a doctor all of a sudden comes to you, or a healthcare practitioner comes to you and says, listen, we have been fighting for a cure for this length of time, and it's not affecting the disease progression. It's not reversing it. It's not slowing it down. So now we want to get more into comfort care. It feels like a letdown. Like, what do you mean comfort care? Am I just not going to do nothing? I'm just going to sit here and just let the disease take over my body? Once again, nothing can be further from the truth. Comfort care is very active care. It's very active care. It still includes doctor's offices, if you so choose. If someone has a disease or an illness in their body that's causing them pain, you still have to get pain management. You still have to be active in making sure that we're providing the comfort care that you need to eradicate the body of the pain, or at least lessen it to the least amount as possible. So it does include actively seeking pain management, a lot of emotional support. And with the hospice care module, that's what we have in place. We have a doctor, we have social worker, we have the nurse, we have the home health aide, we have chaplain. So we have a lot of people in your small circle to make sure that you're getting help in all of those other arenas of your comfort care, because comfort care can be very active care. So you have your pain management or your comfort management, you have your emotional support, spiritual support. That's a big one for a lot of people, is spiritual support. That's really big. Family education. A lot of people start going into educating arenas when it comes to end of life care and what that looks like, support services, making sure that you're continuing to live some people become very active during this time too. And I know we've talked about that before. Some people really start checking off bucket lists. There was a post that came up the other day, and this gentleman said that someone asked him, if you had 3 months to live, what would be the one thing that you would do? And he answered it by saying something like, I would go on a vacation, or I would go. And the person responded and said, so why won't you do that now? Why are you waiting until someone tells you that you only have a limited time left on your life before you start doing the things that you want to do, if that were the news that you got? Do it now. So what happens to a lot of people in this end of life space is when they do get that news that they have 6 months or less to live, or a year less to live, then they start focusing on the quality of their life. And now they're making bucket lists, they're checking things off, and they're really starting to live because they've been given the gift of time. So that challenged me to say, am I going to wait until someone gives me a prognosis of 6 months or less before I do the things that I desire to do? Or am I going to try to incorporate that in my life now? So comfort care can be very active care. Don't get it twisted. Very active care. Because people start to redefine what living looks like. They start to redefine that. They start honoring their wishes. They start preserving their dignity. Very important. And they become very active, like physically active, to whatever their body can tolerate, depending on wherever they are in their disease progression of this journey. Because comfort care does not mean less care. It doesn't mean less care. It's just a different type of care. Comfort care does not mean less care. Comfort care is a different type of care. And I need for everybody to hear that. Comfort care does not mean less care. Comfort care is a different type of care. It's a different type of care. That's what that means. And then people also start to redefine what victory means to them. Remember, we talked about how we've been taught to fight, 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 and how fighting equals winning. And if we don't, we fight harder. But we never quit and we never give up. So then people start redefining what that winning looks like, redefining that victory. And these are conversations that we have with people that when they get that prognosis, we actually sit down with them and we literally do an entire life review of what your life looked like up till now and what you want this life to look like moving forward. And when we talk about the victories in life and how you define those, and now we're redefining what victory looks like and what victory feels like. Because we're talking about when fighting is not the only way to win, the fighting that we've been conditioned and programmed to understand. Now we're redefining what that looks like and redefining the victories. Because remember, we've always attached the cure to the win. If I find a cure, then I've won. I've been victorious. So why is it that you can't still continue to be victorious if you don't find a cure? Ooh, boy, that's heavy and that's layered and that's loaded. So how do we redefine that victory? because we have to reprogram our beliefs and our thoughts when it comes to what winning feels like, looks like, what winning actually is. We have to redefine that. So walking along someone through this journey, and we sit down and we do journaling and we say, okay, what has victory always looked like in your life? What has winning always looked like in your life? What has fighting always looked like? And then when you won, what did that feel like? What did it feel like when you lost? And you said, well, I'm just going to fight again. And I'm just going to fight harder, but I'm not going to quit, and I'm never going to give up. So then how do you reshift that to where now the victory is not in the cure? Because a lot of the times we measure victory in when it comes to cure, because there are a lot of people that go through life, they've been diagnosed with diseases and illnesses, and they fought their way through it. But it doesn't mean if you don't find a cure that you didn't fight. That's not what that means. Sometimes the body wins, and sometimes the disease wins. And that's just reality. You have two people that have cancer, and they're both fighting. One person gets a cure and one person gets hospice. Sometimes the disease wins and sometimes the body does. So how do you help someone shift through redefining the victory? Because we've been measuring victory in cure, right? One more procedure, one more hospitalization, one more ER visit, one more doctor's visit, one more trial of a drug that's in trial phase, or a medicine that's in trial phase. If I just try one more medication, I know it's in trial phase. They're not quite sure exactly what the outcome is going to be, but I have to try something. That's where all of our victory goes into that. But do we no longer have victory when that doesn't happen? Can we still not tap into victory, even if we've been given a prognosis of 6 months or less? But maybe victory isn't one more procedure. Maybe victory isn't one more hospitalization. Maybe victory is one more meal with your family. Maybe victory is one more shared story. Maybe victory is flying a kite with your loved ones, with your children, with your grandparents. Maybe victory is one peaceful night of sleep. Maybe that's victory. How a person can go from shifting from victory being one more hospitalization, one more try at a trial medication that could possibly help eradicate this disease out of my body, to now victory being, you know what? I'm looking forward to just having one more home cooked meal with my family. I'm looking forward to taking one last walk, or just taking walks with my family. I'm looking forward to flying a kite. And oh, how victorious that may feel to somebody. One more I love you, especially that peaceful night's sleep. How many of us can say right now that we have these beautiful, peaceful night sleeps? Sometimes those small things are the greatest victories of all. As corny as that might sound to people, until you actually experience that, where one more home cooked meal with your family is a beautiful victory. Because for some people going through curative treatments, a lot of the time, certain medications, they can't even tolerate eating certain foods. They can't tolerate eating a lot of things at all because it makes them feel so nauseous. Then all of a sudden they stop. They stop with all those treatments. They allow the body to kind of go through its natural state, and now they're able to eat a meal with their family. You see how significant that would be? When before, when they were fighting for a cure, they couldn't even tolerate eating with their family because they could have been sick from all the treatments. And then when they decide, you know what, this is enough. No longer going through the treatments. Body's kind of recovered a little bit from the treatments, and now they're able to have a home cooked meal with their family. That's a victory. That is a victory. That is a victory. They're able to have a peaceful night's sleep because your body is no longer in pain from whatever the treatment could be causing them. And now they're actively getting comfort care, pain management. And now they're able to have a peaceful night's sleep. We have to think about those things. And this is what I pray that this community will allow us to do, to have these open, transparent conversations where we can help people journey through this by using other people's experiences. Because unless you've gone through this, it's very hard to really know. I literally take the experiences that I have been a part of and I use that to help other people because it's not my experience. So I have all of the education that I've received over the past 30 years, that was taught to me from other people's journeys and their life's lived experiences. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes we don't realize that we spend so much time, and I had this conversation with one of my patients, and we have great conversations, really insightful conversations about what they feel about the dying process, how they feel about what they're going through. Very open about death, because he always says, it's right at my door. He says, right at my door. Death is right at my door. It's right there. That's the prognosis that I've been given. And he can feel it in his body. He knows his body is starting to kind of give into whatever the disease process is, and he can feel it, but we have these very open conversations about it. Very open. And he says sometimes, which I thought was very profound, he says sometimes a person spends so much time fighting against death that they forget to fight for their life. He said, but I'm not talking about the length of my life. I'm talking about the quality of my life. He said, sometime when I was first got the diagnosis, he said, I went into fight mode and I spent years fighting against death, that I wasn't fighting for my life. I wasn't fighting to live. And I just thought, wow. He said, when I look back on it over the past 2-3 years and all of the energy that I spent fighting, running from death, because he said, when I first heard the prognosis, that's the first thing I thought was, I'm going to die and I'm not going to let that happen. So he said he spent the first 2-3 years just fighting against death, that he literally forgot to fight for his life. And now when things slowed down and hospice was brought into the conversation, he said now he's finally focused on living. And he said, it's not the length of my life. He said, that's not what I'm fighting for anymore. I'm fighting for the quality. So if he can go out with his family to dinner, he does, and enjoys every moment of it. Of course, he gets very winded, very tired. By the time he comes back, he's ready to sleep and may sleep for 2 or 3 days, which is perfectly okay. But he was fighting for his life. So busy fighting against death that I forgot to fight for life. That to me was so profound. So busy fighting against death that I forgot to fight for life. Beautiful. And it helped me put it into perspective as his hospice nurse, to help when it comes to the conversations that we're having, understanding that he has completely come to a conclusion of where his life is headed. And even though he may have gotten a time frame, he always says, you never know. It can happen today. It can happen 6 months beyond the time frame. And I tell him, you're absolutely correct. Absolutely 100% correct. But I thought that was very, very, very profound. Very profound. Spend so much time fighting against death that I forgot to fight for life. Whew, sometimes these conversations, I know they can get loaded and layered, and I love every minute of it. So remember, this was great. When fighting is not the only way to win. When fighting is not the only way to win. Although we have been taught that in order to win, you fight. And if you don't, you better fight harder. Don't you quit, and don't you give up. And then all of a sudden a disease comes into our lives, or illness comes into our life, and it changes the complete definition of fighting. And everything that I've been taught, everything that I've been programmed to believe that fighting equals winning, all of a sudden is not applying. It's not applying to this phase of my life. What do I do? And then lovingly and compassionately helping someone transition the definition of victory. Of now, I'm no longer fighting against death, but I'm fighting for life. I'm fighting for life, and not length of life. I'm fighting for quality of life. That to me is, I just send out the biggest hugs and kudos to people that are in that phase of their journey, where they've been given this prognosis and everything that they've known in order to be victorious in their life. The very definition has now shifted to where now I'm fighting for the victory just to have a dinner with my family, a peaceful night's sleep, a walk on the beach, flying a kite with my grandchild. Those are my victories now. And being able to walk alongside of someone as they're going through that transition, which must be extremely difficult for so many people. When fighting is not the only way to win. Wow. That's amazing. So listen, thank you. Thank you for being engaged. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for teaching me. These platforms, this podcast is, I can't explain it enough what they mean to community. In order for people to have a place where, even if you're not being faced with an illness in your life right now, at least start having the conversation with yourself about what death means and feels to you. What does that mean and feel to you? So in case this conversation does come up somewhere in your future journey, that you don't have the heaviness of what death can feel like. Some people get to a point where they're just like, I've embraced that death is just a continuation of my life in a different form. And I pray that I'm that strong. I can say it now, very easily I can say it now because I'm not being faced with a disease or something of that sort. But I hope that if that is my journey, that I can still bring the same energy, as people say, bring that energy when you get that diagnosis. I hope I can still bring this energy when I get the diagnosis, if I get the diagnosis. If I have the opportunity to even actively participate in my dying process, because we all know, we don't know how death is coming. We know that. We don't know how it's coming. But I pray that if I have an opportunity to participate in my own dying process, can I keep the same energy of how I feel about death right now? Easy to do when I'm not faced with it. But that's the only option I have because I haven't been faced with it. So I do want to keep the same energy, but I think it has to be a practice. It has to be a part of my life. I have to look at death as a beautiful extension of my life. I have to look at it that way. So this week, we talked about when fighting is not the only way to win. Next week, all these topics get so good. I have to go back and listen to the podcast myself. When love feels like guilt. When love feels like guilt. We're going to talk about one of the heaviest burdens that families have to carry. The guilt that comes with making difficult healthcare decisions. The guilt that comes when making difficult healthcare decisions. When love feels like guilt, because we're making the decision based out of love. So why does it feel so heavy, burdened with guilt? Because I think I'm making the best decision for my loved one, but I feel so guilty with making it. When love feels like guilt, that's going to be next week's. I'm excited about that. I'm excited. So once again, thank you all so much for joining the Melanated Hospice Nurse podcast. Remember to like and subscribe. Share these podcasts with other members of your community, with your family, loved ones, coworkers, friends. Share them, because if these podcasts are helpful to you, I know they're going to be helpful to other people. And if they are helpful, please leave a comment and let's talk about it, because on Thursday, we're going to go live. I'm thinking about going live from YouTube on Thursday, but on Thursdays, we're going to go live to continue the conversation when fighting is not the only way to win. But I want to continue to I want to hear from you all. I want to hear from community. I love to read the comments that you all leave in the comment section. And I want to discuss these comments on the live on Thursday. So leave your comments in the comment section. Leave your experiences. If you don't on this platform, we have other platforms. We have YouTube, which you're on right now. We have Spotify. Some of you are watching from Spotify. We also have Facebook. We have Instagram. We have TikTok. So leave the comments in the comment section, but I really want you all to like and subscribe this YouTube page, because I truly believe that this is how we're going to get through understanding end-of-life care, especially when it comes to our community, understanding how it impacts us. But we can only do this one conversation at a time, because everything is worth a conversation. Everything is worth a conversation. So listen, may compassion guide you and culture ground you. Until we meet next week, bye for now. Take care. Leave your comments. Thank you, guys.